All right, welcome to the podcast.
Yes.
Jeremy and Andy talk movies /
The Take
Two
Two
podcast / 2GM podcast.
But today's only take one.
It's take one.
Yeah.
What is going to be a little different about today, we are getting to talk about new movies. Always our favorite thing to do on the podcast. Yeah. But this will be the first time where we aren't coming in with just one movie to talk about. We're coming off Thanksgiving break, and we've been active. We've been hitting the cinemas.
We have.
And so we've got a couple of new movies that we have both seen to talk about. We're going to dive into those. And first off, I just want to ask, before we even get into that, how was your Thanksgiving?
It was great. I probably, the camera adds 10 pounds, right? Just everyone keep that in mind, because I have eaten so much food. And then today I've been at the Olive Garden because I took my dad out for his birthday. So I'm one bite of food away from just being in a food coma. So if I've eaten so much food. Thanksgiving was great. It was relaxing. The food was good. My kids are all older now, so I'm not entertaining kids. We're watching football together. We talked movies for a while, so it was great.
Sounds good.
I know yours was good because I know what you did on Thanksgiving.
I did my movie triple feature.
Yeah.
I went to the AMC Theater in Mattoon and started off with Next Goal Wins. Mm-hmm. Walked out, bought a ticket for Napoleon. Walked out, bought a ticket for The Holdovers.
Yeah.
You never know for sure because some days you're into the triple feature idea and some days you're not. And I always worry, Thanksgiving's that day where I want to do it, and I have the time, it's free, and I set aside, and I'm like, what happens if I don't feel it that day?
I'm just not feeling it.
I just can't focus on movies today. Mm-hmm. Luckily, that wasn't the case.
Okay, good.
I enjoyed every bit of sitting through those movies.
Nice. You couldn't have had 3 more different movies to watch.
Yeah, really different experiences. Mm-hmm. And, not to give away anything from our discussions, but I'll say this too. I progressively better with each one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So once again, you and I haven't talked at all. We've seen a lot of movies between the two of us in the last week, and we haven't discussed any of them.
That's right. So I say what we do is we start with the populist choice. We're a podcast of the people.
We are.
For the people.
We are here for the people.
And the movie that the people are seeing is the new Hunger Games, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I think I said that correctly.
I think so.
I wasn't even sure of the exact title of it till after I got out of seeing it
right.
this afternoon.
Right.
We talk about how...
Because everyone just says Hunger Games.
Yes.
Yeah.
We talk about often how we see these movies and it's pretty instant reaction. Mm-hmm. This is the most instant reaction that I'll have.
You literally just saw it.
Yes, I got done with it just a little over an hour ago.
Wow.
This movie, or 2 hours ago, I guess,
at
this point. So still digesting, but,
sure.
Again, I joke, we're a podcast of people, but the reality is that this podcast has changed some of my movie watching habits because I probably would not have seen this movie.
It wasn't on your radar.
If it wasn't for the podcast. I have no emotional attachment to the Hunger Games franchise. Mm-hmm. And the fact that it's a big franchise that I have no attachment to, I'm just like another soulless installment in the money-making machine where they couldn't let it lie dead because they're just looking at it like, we made too much money off those Hunger Games movies. Can we make another one? Is the way that I would view this. Mm-hmm. And so normally I would just stay away on principle. Mm-hmm. But you had seen it.
I have.
I think in large part because your daughter wanted to see it.
Correct.
And you're a good dad.
Well, thank you. Full disclosure, without giving anything away, I wouldn't have gone to see it just by myself. Mm-hmm. It wasn't, I feel exactly how you feel. Another soulless money grab.
Yeah. But you said you had seen it, and I was like, I'll go see it so we can talk about it on the podcast.
What a podcast partner you are.
I try to be. I also, that's living the single life.
Why not go see the Hunger Games?
On a Sunday afternoon, you'd be like, I've got nothing else to do. Why don't I just shoot up to the theater?
The Hunger Games, whatever it's called.
Exactly.
Ballad, Songbirds, and Snakes.
Yes.
Or Snakes and... I still don't know.
Songbirds and Snakes.
Songbirds and Snakes. Okay.
So, that said, I probably didn't sit down giving it the most fair shot. I think I sat down here and thought, all right, just, show me what you got.
Let's go. Yeah.
And I'll say this. I had fun watching it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've actually seen all the Hunger Games movies. I don't know why. Like I watched them all. I think just
Well, they were a big thing.
And I think I kind of felt compelled to watch them. I think I was living with my brother at the time. He was interested enough in watching them, and so I watched them all. I can't tell you hardly anything about any of them. I don't remember anything about them.
Yeah.
They seem very forgettable to me. And so I was watching this, and I go, I know this is just a prequel. It probably is just a money grab. I think this is the best one that I've seen.
Okay.
And, maybe in a couple of years I'll completely have forgotten what this movie was.
Sure,
Like those,
sure.
But I do think, like I said, I enjoyed this more than I thought. I think I enjoyed it more than I had anything in the series up to this point.
That's a win then.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you want my opinion? So I'm going to sound like I'm going to say two contradicting things because there's a part of me that I do think this is just a lifeless money grab. And I'm afraid that it's going to open up the door because Hollywood, they find one thing that even just kind of works and they just run it into the ground. So I am afraid we're going to start seeing now a whole bunch of prequels of pre-existing movies where they go, oh, you know what we could do? Prequel. Because truthfully, this is a prequel about the character of Snow.
Yeah, who was
Donald Sutherland
character, right? Yeah.
I didn't leave those other Hunger Games movies thinking I need to know more about this character. I thought Donald Sutherland was good in those movies. Yeah. I like the other so there's Hunger Games, Catching Fire, and then they split Mockingjay up into two parts.
Yeah.
I did not like the two Mockingjay movies. I enjoyed the original Hunger Games and Catching Fire. I liked the story. They're not my favorite movies, but I liked them. But in no way, shape, or form did I leave there thinking, I need to know about this character of Snow. So there is part of me that just goes, oh no, this is probably going to open up a whole world of unnecessary prequels. But I did enjoy the movie. So like I said, I don't mean to sound like I'm contradicting myself.
Yeah.
Because, there is part of me that goes, there is literally no reason for this movie to exist.
Yeah.
But it does. My 13-year-old daughter wanted to see it. So in that context, I enjoyed it. It's well done. I thought the acting was good. The Hunger Games part of the movie, I was engaged in that. I was interested in that. So, I came away from it ultimately like, you know what? Even though the movie guy in me doesn't feel like this movie needs to exist, in spite of that, I did enjoy the movie.
Yeah. I think one thing that you can't argue with about the Hunger Games series as a whole is their casting. Because it's not even like, oh man, that person's so perfect for that role. Like, you say about a lot of Marvel movies, like, oh man, how perfect was that guy for that? But I just mean the quality of actors they get. Yeah. There's been so many great names in the Hunger Games series where you kind of look back and be like, oh my gosh, the Hunger Games was loaded. And this one's kind of the same way. Like, they get really good actors.
They do.
And
Nobody gave a bad performance.
Yeah, like, you can't fault anything in the making of this movie as far as like the quality. Like, it's really well made.
It looks good. The dialogue is good.
About the only thing that I want to criticize, and I realize it's not fair because the target demographic is like teens.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the stuff that bothers me is like the stuff that they did to make it for teens as opposed to making it for adults.
An adult movie.
And that's what it is. So like, it's not a fair criticism, but it is the thing that keeps me from liking a little bit. Like some of the stuff that just gets a little silly, the songbird part, like it's like borderline a musical, like when somebody can just sing perfectly at any point in time, and like the most awesome professional singing, like, and it's, that part gets a little silly. So on the one hand, I'm like, oh, this movie has got too many silly flourishes like that. On the other hand, I love a movie with a protagonist that's a little morally ambiguous.
And I mean, that's what this whole movie is about.
And I gotta be honest, I was fascinated. Like, I couldn't believe that I actually remembered they called him Snow early in the movie. Not Snow. That's from the other movies. That's the Donald Sutherland character. He's the bad guy president. And like, when I realized that, like, kind of piece of those dots, was like, oh, we're following the bad guy. I literally didn't know anything about this movie going in.
Me neither.
So when I was like, oh, we're following the bad guy, part of me is always like, oh, bad guy origin story. That's so like in now. But at the same time, I was like, how are they going to make us want to follow this guy and kind of root for him as our protagonist, knowing he's got to end up being the big bad guy.
You're exactly
down
right.
the road. And I thought they did a really good job
I do too.
navigating that.
I do too. And I really like that it didn't, it wasn't done like we talk about this a lot, like the mustache twirling villain. There wasn't that moment where he was just like, I have now decided to be the bad guy.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. I thought in a movie that definitely does target, like I said, my 13-year-old ate it up. She loved it. But I did think that was handled well. That progression where you see both sides and you kind of see how he's getting lured over to the bad side of things. And I thought that could have been really heavy-handed or just so like, I don't know, just could have been so obvious or so cheesy almost. And I thought that they did a good job with that.
Yeah. And I thought there was a lot of good little clever flourishes. The science aside, the whole thing with the snakes having to like know your scent before they attack you and him like sneaking in the rack.
Well done.
Like, that's a clever little.
It was cleverish.
So there was things like that I thought were, it was well made.
I liked it.
So besides it being, the couple of things, the singing and things like that are for teenagers.
Sure.
Thought it was 30 minutes too long.
So
that said, when I say it's 32 minutes long, I don't think it's the problem is that it's a 2.5-hour movie. After I wrote it's 32 minutes long, I wrote a note like it might have just been too much story. Like the story's too bloated. Mm-hmm. Like they tried to pack too much in that 2.5 hours. Because you're right. When they were in the Hunger Games, I'm with you. They had me. But
they had me.
The movie's like an hour build up to the Hunger Games, 45 minutes in the Hunger Games, and then like 45 minutes.
That was the weirdest thing to me was the pacing. I guess you'd call it the pacing or just the story structure.
Yeah.
Build up, because we're just preconditioned to think everything is building to the actual Hunger Games.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that they have to follow that formula, but I do think it did drag too much that third act.
Yeah, and I'm open to the possibility that it's the fault of audience expectation
because you're conditioned to think
I'm
what's the
expecting it to wrap up,
yes.
And when it's just dragging on, I'm like, this wrap up's taking forever.
But I thought about that a lot, and I still think that wrap up took. I don't know what they could have cut,
right?
But it was just too much.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Normally, again, I don't like to ever go read what critics say before seeing a movie, or even especially before a podcast, because I don't want to influence my thinking.
Mm-hmm.
But this one, I actually had thought about maybe going to see it yesterday. And looked up, and I was like, let me just see. Are the critics even liking this movie? Because if the critics say it's bad, I'm out. But if the critics are like, it's shockingly good, maybe I'll be more interested. And, it's kind of...
Was it kind of mixed?
Kind of mixed. Mm-hmm. But the one criticism I read in like a little blurb was just the mistake they made with Mockingjay was splitting it into two parts.
And they said they should have.
This one is... They crammed it all into one. Mm-hmm. And like, as I read that, I didn't think much of it. And after I watched it, I was like, man, that critic might have been onto something because they packed so much into this story that it maybe should have been too.
It should have.
Of course,
they should have just maybe eliminated, like, he had the friend in that third act who eventually got hung. Maybe just cut him out because really, because of the good acting, you're really more focused on the story of him and the girl.
Yeah.
And really, because I didn't read this book. I didn't watch these trailers. I really went into this movie cold. So I didn't know where they were going with the story of him and her.
Yeah.
And so I was interested. Even if it was more for a younger audience, they had me. And so I really liked the stuff of them, hey, let's run away together. I think it just got bogged down with plus there's this friend and he's trying to sneak around and do this. And all that was, for a minute there, I was like, I don't know who's doing what. Yeah. They lost me for a second.
Yeah. I still, again, very fresh off this, not sure that I find the ending with him and the girl all that satisfactory. It felt like a quick, hard right turn with them.
We're all of a sudden just like we're in love and we're going to run away together. And then she's like, oh, wait a second. I'm really suspicious of you all of a sudden. That did happen fast.
And, but again, nitpicking, especially in a movie like this. I'm not going in expecting a master class and everything.
But you know what I did like, actually? Again, for this kind of movie, I did like that they left the fate of the girl open.
Yeah. And an interesting line from Peter Dinklage's character. Yes. He said that not knowing will drive me
mad. Yeah. So I thought that was all really well done.
Yeah.
Whereas he shoots at her, it kind of looks like he hit her, but he never fought. You never know. I mean, you assume she's still alive.
Yeah.
But they didn't actually show you. Like once she leaves that cabin, she's out of the movie.
Yeah.
And I thought that was well done, especially with Peter Dinklage, who's a good actor. When like that'll drive you mad. It was like that was enough to show you the start of him going. They didn't need the scene of him, like I said, twirling the mustache and all that stuff. So I thought that stuff was well done.
Do you know, this might be something maybe through your daughter or something, who the main actor was? Because I had no idea who he was.
No idea.
I don't recognize him from anything. I didn't know if maybe Katie was like, oh, he's from this other thing that teenagers know.
Nope.
I thought he did a good job.
I thought he was good.
I will say, though, it annoyed me the whole time because I'm like, he looks like somebody. I know he's not anybody I know, but he looks like somebody, and I could never put my finger on who he looked like. But.
And I looked it up after the movie, like right when we got out into the van, and I didn't really pay attention to what he was in. I just wanted to see if something jumped out at me, and nothing did.
Yeah.
So but I thought he was good.
Yeah. The girl, I'm pretty sure, was in the West Side Story remake.
She was. And she's in the upcoming Snow White.
Okay.
And I think she's controversial, but I don't really know or care why.
Yeah.
So, but I thought she did good in the movie.
And then Jason Schwartzman is a national treasure.
He is.
I love him as the...
Also, do you know who his mom is?
I have no idea.
Talia Shire.
What?
Yes.
What?
I literally didn't know this until I was reading about him because I thought he was great in the movie.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, his mom is Talia Shire? AKA Adrian from the Rocky movies. Yeah.
But like now that you say it, like I can actually see a resemblance a little bit.
That's his mom. I literally learned that like yesterday.
My mind is blown right
I
now.
knew it
It's
would
not
be.
very often that people give me a piece of movie
I know.
like that.
I'm like, wait, how did I not know this? But yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, but he's so
He's good.
He's so funny.
He's good.
Yeah, I was watching a little bit of Asteroid City that he's in, and I was just like,
He's always good.
he's one of those guys that's like, I don't know if he should be a bigger star because he's not like a typical movie star naturally, and like he's had a really great career and he pops up in tons of things. So like I guess he is kind of a movie star, but I don't know. Every time I see him, I'm like, this guy's great, and it's appropriately so because I don't know if it's supposed to be a connected character, but the Stanley Tucci character.
So that's it.
Is it supposed to be him?
It's him.
Stanley Tucci is the same way, where he's an actor that I'm like, Stanley Tucci.
That's supposed to be the younger version of him.
I wondered if it was supposed to be the younger version.
So that's the kind of stuff that I also enjoyed too. Like I'm not like a diehard Hunger Games. Like I know every detail, but I know it well enough where you can see the way they connect the prequel to the, and that stuff's I always enjoy that stuff. And it's like, I liked how in this one, it's like the early Hunger Games. And then in the Jennifer Lawrence movie, it's like, of course, years later. And the Hunger Games, they've got all the fancy technology. And in this one, they were kind of just figuring it out. Like the drone stuff was funny, actually, I thought.
My favorite moment of the movie was one of the drones goes in and all the drones go
just
crash. And Jason Schwartzman's character's like, these drones aren't very good, are they?
Yeah, like that was, so I'm actually, now that we're talking about it, I'm finding myself having more positive things to say about the movie than maybe even I thought I would before we started recording. So, but like I said, ultimately my biggest fear is just, this is just going to open the door. We're going to get a prequel of all these movies that we don't need.
Well, not to mention is this going to lead to more and more Hunger Games? Like, do we have to bridge the entire gap between?
And that's my thing ultimately. Even though I did enjoy this movie, we don't always need to know. I don't need the Darth Vader origin. Like Darth Vader is just a cool character by himself. I didn't need to see step by step how he became Darth Vader.
Right.
I just didn't. And so I hope they'll leave well enough alone, but I fear that they won't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, any other thoughts on the Hunger Games?
No, not really. I mean, just a good use of my time. Probably should have been 20 minutes shorter.
Yeah.
But I did definitely find some things in it I enjoy. It's not going to make my top 5 movies of the year list, but I didn't walk away like, oh my gosh, that was pathetic. So a pleasant surprise, maybe I would call it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. I think if nothing else, like I'm glad it's good for what normal teenager fare is.
Yeah.
Like teens, I approve of you being into this movie.
Yes, there's definitely dumber, worse movies that teens could be into.
Yeah.
So, good enough for me.
Yeah, good stuff. All right. Next movie we're going to talk about, totally different kind of movie, big, historical, biopic, Napoleon.
Yes.
Ridley Scott's newest movie from Apple.
Is that okay?
I think it's just going to sleep.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt anything.
You're fine. His newest movie from
Another Apple.
where Apple threw a ton
Apple
of
is
money into a big-time filmmaker.
Apple is just dishing out the money. Because I read where this was a $150 to $200 million movie, which Killers of the Flower Moon was a $200 million movie.
Yeah, and boy, I'll say this: this one looks it. You see the money on the screen.
You do.
And
I saw this one on the IMAX.
Did you?
I did.
See, I didn't, and I kind of wanted to, but again, I was doing 3 movies in a day, and I was like, we'll not worry about the IMAX, and I wasn't at an IMAX theater, so I didn't want to go out of my way. But I would recommend anybody who wants to go see it. It's a type of movie that's worth IMAX. Having not seen it in IMAX, I'm like, that's an IMAX.
It looked great, and it sounded great on the IMAX.
Yeah. So my first notes about this movie were, it's really well made. Mm-hmm. It's really well acted.
Okay.
My biggest problem with this movie is I have no idea what they were trying to say.
I couldn't agree with you more. I would see it with my parents, and I told them that on the way home. I go, I don't know what point they were trying to convey.
Yeah. I've tried to convey this to people. My friends would ask me about it, like, "Oh, you saw Napoleon? What'd you think?" And I'm like, "It's a good movie. It's a well-made movie. I enjoyed the movie." I was like, it just sort of left me a little cold because I was like, I don't think it had any heart to it. Like, there's no emotional core. There's nothing to connect to.
No.
And the more I was thinking about it, I was like, I feel like this is the year, and it's becoming a theme over and over again in our podcast. This is the year of filmmakers making films that really reflect themselves personally.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about this with Nolan making Oppenheimer and how I think he connects to that sort of mad genius of what can I do and not so much worried about the implications of it. We talked about this with The Killer, with Fincher, and saying like the methodical nature of it. And I think this movie really reflects Ridley Scott. Now the difference is I think those other two are aware of the connection. I don't think Ridley Scott is. But I think Ridley is a sort of cold, professional, mercenary filmmaker. He cranks out films and he's like, it's all about preparation, knowing what you're doing. They shot this movie in, I think I read 61 days.
Wow.
Which is mind-blowing.
That's crazy.
For a movie of this
if you would have told me it took him 250 days,
exactly,
I would have believed you.
There are, and I hope I'm getting that right from the trivia, but I'm pretty sure it was 61 days. And he credits it. He's like, it's all about just being prepared before you get started. And I've heard him in interviews talk about that before. Like, you've just got to be prepared, and then it's you can.
Holy cow!
He said because he said preparation and not a whole bunch of unnecessary retakes, which almost sounds like he always makes comments that sound like shots at someone else.
Yeah,
it almost sounds like he gets tired of hearing about like Fincher doing 100 takes, and he's like unnecessary, you know, like. But I think that Ridley Scott's, again, I think he compares him to Napoleon. Napoleon just sort of like does. He's just like, I just know how to execute, and that's what I do. I just got to keep going and execute. Scott also doesn't know how to slow down. And I think that's his downfall. People look at his filmography and you go, hey man, maybe if you made a few less, you could focus on the choices you're making.
Because he's got some classics under his belt.
He does.
But then he's got where you're like, Domino? Really? Or maybe that was Tony Scott. I don't know.
Yeah, him and his brother, sometimes you confuse too. But I'm looking at it going like, I mean, even seeing the preview, which it's always funny, walking out of a movie, 15 minutes later, watching another movie, but you're seeing the preview for the movie you just watched. But it's telling that they have to say, from the maker of Alien, Blade Runner, Gladiator, and it's like, boy, those aren't recent movies.
Yeah.
And the same thing for Michael Mann's Ferrari, too. They're from the maker of movies from the 90s, you know? And it's like, hey guys, if you've got to go that far back, maybe you don't need to be bragging that's from the maker of, even though I appreciate those movies. And
no, definitely.
They are kind of legendary filmmakers. But I just think Ridley's inability to slow down.
Because he's up there in age.
Yeah, is the same thing for Napoleon. Napoleon's downfall was just in Russia.
All I know how to do is just keep going.
And he's like, no, we got to keep going. We're
because they can tell him, like, we need to wait out the winter.
Yeah.
Nope, we're going.
Nope. And I go, wow, that's Ridley. But also, I think the scene, which was one of my favorites, of Napoleon in the ship's like cabin talking to the boys on the ship.
Yeah.
And he's like, the hardest thing you'll have to deal with is other people's failure. You must not tolerate this. And I was like, I feel like that is Ridley Scott's words coming out of his mouth, because
And he even said something like, I don't fail.
Yeah.
But other people do.
yeah, because every bomb that Ridley's had,
He blames it
he
on
blames it on something.
the studio.
I really liked the movie The Last Duel that he did, which Matt Damon and Ben Affleck wrote and started. I thought it was a good movie, but it didn't do well at the box office. And he was blaming like the modern moviegoer and the culture and their attention span.
Yeah.
Like he just went off about that. Like he just always seems like a grumpy old man who blames something else. And I'm like, dude, you are Napoleon.
Right.
As I'm watching it, and I just so. Like I said, it's like the year of filmmakers making movies about
Scorsese, Killers of the Flower Moonlight.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. So that was sort of like the thing I can't stop dwelling on about that movie is how the parallel it has with its filmmaker.
Yeah. So I agree with you completely that it was just kind of a very cold movie. I agree with your takeaway of like, I'm not quite sure. And maybe a movie like that doesn't have to have a theme or something that's building towards, but it felt a little directionless to me.
Yeah.
And I can't decide if I think Joaquin Phoenix was good in that movie or not.
Right.
I'm having a hard time deciding, was he good or was he not good?
So
And I usually can land somewhere, but on this one, because I think there were scenes where I was like, that was a weird choice by Joaquin Phoenix.
yeah. He's an actor that certainly seems to love doing parts where he doesn't have to hardly do anything. I mean, as far as like he likes to like kind of look, not say a whole lot, kind of be like
There was a few parts where I was like, is he even trying?
yeah.
And he's just kind of like, hey, I'm like, he didn't even really come up with like a voice or anything. It was just like, there was part of me that felt like he just showed up that day and was like, all right, give me my hat, okay, all right, hey, I'm Napoleon.
Yeah.
And it just didn't feel like that performance was alive to me.
Yeah. So from the trivia, I also read that Joaquin Phoenix talked to Ridley Scott like 2 weeks before production and was like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. And Ridley Scott was like,
in a way
what do you
can
mean?
tell.
He's like, I don't know what I'm doing with this character yet. So it said they spent 10 days together talking all day about the character and like going through every scene and figuring it all out. And I'm like, great, Ridley, that's one of those slow down moments. Your lead actor doesn't know what he's doing. Like you spent 10 days talking to him, great. But again, yeah, like you said, it really looked like he didn't know.
It did to
character.
me. And he is a good actor.
He is, yeah.
But I'm just not sure he was good in this movie. And I honestly, and I hate to pick, because I usually am pretty positive on here, I'm not convinced that Vanessa Kirby was good in this movie either.
Yeah.
I'm just not. I just don't know that, in my eyes, if the two leads delivered.
Yeah. I think a big part of that is in the writing. Because
I'm not putting all the blame on them.
I think one of the things that came through was I think they were too reluctant to portray Napoleon in any particular way. Like they didn't want to make him out to be too heroic because
that's so well
they didn't want to make him out to be a villain because he is sort of a French hero. They didn't. So it's like
he just kind of like
they just went
grabbed a little bit of all of them.
So like every time you thought, oh boy, we're finally going to see like, oh, this is what they're leaning into. Like and
then they back off.
He's this insanely angry, jealous guy. But then like no, he doesn't really do anything. Or and
that was my big thing too with him and her together because their relationship was a big part of this story.
Yeah, it was like really the central part of the story.
And I hate when sometimes movies just follow the cliche, whether it's a historical epic or not, or it's a modern movie. The two characters meet, they fall in love, everything's great, starts to get bumpy, and then it just turns into disaster. They didn't follow that, but I think this movie almost needed to follow that.
Yeah.
Because it was like they met and they kind of hit it off, but she was also kind of cold, and then they just got married. And then it was like sometimes they portrayed him like he was a good, loving husband, and they were so in love. And then the next scene they were like, "Oh, I hate you," and he's like bossing her around and berating her. And then the next scene they're like in bed together, and I thought their relationship was all over the place.
It was.
I actually think this is one time where a movie would have benefited from following the usual, like the high of love and then the downfall and the collapse. And this was just, it was all over the place, I felt like. And I never, it was like, do they hate each other? Do they love each, like, it was messy, I thought.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah.
And I wonder, like, I don't know. I guess what I imagine is there probably is a lot of actual, like, writing or a lot of the correspondence that they had in historical documents.
Yeah.
And they probably took a lot from that, maybe.
Yeah.
And I'm like, maybe they were too concerned with being accurate to those because, like, oh man, there's a lot of ups and downs in these letters. Maybe we got to follow that. I don't know. But
I don't know either. But and that probably is the case. But from a movie
but yeah, just
perspective, it felt unfocused and messy to me.
It really did. And I think audiences and critics agree because I think both on the Rotten Tomato scores are about 60, critics and audience.
I think that's honestly fair.
And I'm like, yeah, it's about right. Like, I think they all feel the same way. Like, gorgeous movie.
It looked great. The battle scenes, of course, were well done.
Yeah.
It is amazing. I will say, my mom and dad and I were talking about this on the way home. It's amazing what they can do.
Yeah.
For better or worse, good or bad, the sky's kind of the limit. And these battle scenes, you're like, this is incredible.
Yeah.
And there was some amazing, like, overhead, like, like almost like a drone type of shot. And it's like, that looks incredible.
Yeah. But the thing even about the battle scenes is there are points where I'm watching going like, am I supposed to feel anything in these battle scenes? Am I supposed to be rooting for one side? Am I supposed to just be like, are they supposed to be making me think like, man, just what a ton of unnecessary loss of life? It was just so cold.
It was.
Here's the thing that's happening, and you're
not really invested in any characters except for Napoleon.
Right.
It's like, what was it? Against Russia, was it? The big one towards the end, I think. Where he lost, like,
it was against the English, and then the Prussians were coming in
yeah.
from the side.
And that would be the moment where you're like, okay, here we go. And I'm like you, it was just kind of like, okay, like that looked good, but I had no emotional investment in it at all.
And in the movie's sort of epitaph makes me think where it adds up all the soldiers he lost. That'd be like, I was like, okay, so was that supposed to be the point? Was that supposed to be like, man, Napoleon? He had
success, but he had a lot of failures also.
Yeah, like all these people died under his leadership. I'm like, because if it was, again, like they didn't really drive that home while the movie was happening.
Nope. So yeah, I mean, it looked great, and just like you would normally think, like if you read like months ago, okay, Ridley Scott's going to do a historical drama epic and Joaquin Phoenix is a star, you'd almost think like, well, there's a guaranteed Oscar nomination.
Yeah.
I don't think he'll get one. I really don't think he'll get nominated.
I was thinking through that. I was like, because I was the same way. I was like, it almost feels like it's supposed to be an automatic thing. But I was like, we've got,
and same
we talked about before, we've got Cillian Murphy, Leonardo DiCaprio.
Those are shoe-ins.
Fassbender, I would think.
I would think so too.
I would be really upset if Phoenix got it and Fassbender did.
I would too. Fassbender, I
was like, we've got 3, and again, having not seen it, not knowing what to expect, the expectation is Bradley Cooper with this Maestro movie is the sort of Oscar type.
They love that stuff.
That you would think he'll be for. And I'm like, that would mean if Phoenix gets in, there's 5 right there, and it's just
there's got to be some better performances. And I'm not ready to talk through it. But. And same with her, where you would think like, okay, here's a role an actress can really. I don't think she'll get a nomination either.
No. And again, another one that I don't know how much time Vanessa Kirby had to prepare for the role because, according to trivia, Jodie Comer, who was the female lead,
she took over for her.
Yeah, supposed to do it, and then scheduling conflicts. So Vanessa Kirby came out last minute. Ridley, pump the brakes, man.
Yes.
Let your actors figure out these characters. And
I like her. Like, she's in the later Mission Impossible movies. I mean, I'm not trying to pick on her at all, but it just didn't, and I'm not just blaming her. I think you're right. I think it's just like that. You should have stepped back because it just didn't, it felt very, I don't know, just uneven to me.
Man, I mean, I keep going back and forth, like, again, with what were they trying to tell us about Napoleon? Were they trying to tell us that he was, like, an ambitious guy? Because there's, like, moments in the movie where I think back and go, like, okay, here he's talking about, like, wanting to make a name for himself. But then he's also, like, there's other parts of the movie where he's like, all I'm here to do is serve. And he actually does some things that seem like they're trying to make that point. Like, he's actually a good civil servant of France.
Yeah.
And it's like, it just ends and you go, it was just a mess of, like, he was a complicated guy, I guess, but ultimately it made him not
that
anything.
interesting.
Yeah.
And like, not to make it weird or anything, but like some of the love scenes in that movie were so weirdly done. And it's like sometimes they're just portrayed as a clown and like just a complete loser.
Yeah.
It was just really uneven.
Sometimes he's that really brave guy who charges into battle with his troops. Sometimes he's the guy who like Parliament's chasing him out of a building and he's running and hiding behind the door.
Like a coward.
Yeah,
and the stuff with him and her and like he wanted a baby and stuff, and that's fine. Yeah. But the choices they made, I think, were really weird. And then for like a second there, it's like a screwball comedy where he's like dragging her under the table. And I was like, what is happening right now? And that stuff just didn't work at all for me.
Yeah. Well, and again, looking at scenes, trying to pinpoint, like, is this the thing they're trying to say? There's a scene where he's telling her, like, you're nothing without me and stuff. And then she flips on him and is like, you're nothing without me, say it. You know?
And he does.
And he does. And you're like, okay, so they're trying to say, like, he's kind of a wimp and, like, whipped by her.
But they hadn't done anything to build up to that.
And it really doesn't even stick to that very well. It
was weird. And I'm not, it's not like I hated this movie. I probably sound more negative, but I just ultimately walked away where I was like, I feel like that should have been better. The performances should have been better. I mean, the battle scenes, they nailed that. They looked great. I think you hit it completely right when you said it was just a very cold movie. And I just had a hard time having any emotional attachment to anybody in that movie.
Yeah. And I think any scene on its own, for the most part, is okay.
Yeah.
It's like,
when you look at it as a whole, though, it just doesn't add up.
I am curious. There's going to be a 4-hour cut when it releases on Apple TV.
Yes.
And like,
maybe that will fill in.
That could be a disaster, because if it's an hour and a half that doesn't add anything, then I'll be like, oh my gosh.
Like, is this ever going to end?
But if it's an hour and a half and suddenly like it feels like it fleshes out the character, I'll be like, okay, it needed all of that. That's what happened. And Ridley Scott was the one who was actually adamant about 2.5 hours for the theatrical cut. He said it's his opinion that 2.5 hours is about as long as people will
pay attention basically
in a theater, basically, without having to get up and do something, without being able to pause, like that's sort of their limit. Which again, I don't know if it is. Everything he says, I think just having heard him talk sometimes, feels like a jab. It feels like that was the jab.
At like Scorsese.
Going like,
because his last couple of movies have been 3.5 hours.
Right. And who knows? Maybe Ridley Scott and Scorsese had a great relationship.
I don't know.
But he just feels like a crotchety old guy who's always taking shots.
Yeah.
So he cut it down from 4 to 2.5 hours, and maybe the problem were with the editing choices, and they cut out too important of scenes.
It could have been
in service of other things.
You're right, though. That 4-hour cut, either disaster or I see what like. I don't think there's going to be any middle ground. Are you going to give it a shot? Would you give the 4-hour cut a shot?
I think I will, just because I have Apple TV. I think if I had to pay money to go for it. But at the same time, it's like, man,
4 hours?
4 hours.
With these characters who just really, truthfully, aren't that fun to spend time with.
Honestly, what will probably happen is I'll probably wait and just hear what the response is to 4-hour cut. It'll probably be like Zack Snyder's Justice League. Like, I had no interest in that until I heard a bunch of people saying, like, hey, this actually made it, like, way better. And I was like, okay, now I'm curious. And I watched and I was like, hey, it was better. I don't think I needed to watch it, but it got me in.
Well, it had nowhere to go but up.
Right.
But that's a different discussion.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, too. Like, you talk about a movie that's cold or the characters are cold. You could make movies like The Killer is a good example, where the point of that character is that he is cold and efficient and stuff. But there's still entertainment to be found in that.
Yeah.
Which is something The Killer got right that Napoleon did not get right.
Well, and the difference is a character that is supposed to be cold, and we know that, so we're like, okay, that's what I'm doing. I'm watching Coke. Versus a character where we're just left cold on what was that character. Because I don't think they were trying to say that Napoleon was like ruthless or like.
Yeah. It was almost like they just like, man, pick a trait that you want to show and commit to it.
Right.
Instead of trying to like dip your toes into all these different character traits and really giving us none of them.
Yeah.
Like, just pick something. If you want him to be a brave conqueror, go with that. If you want him to be a, downtrodden, his wife's verbally abusing him, go with it. But don't try and do them all. And then it all just adds up to nothing to me.
Yeah. So go see Napoleon in IMAX.
We just dumped on that movie for 20 minutes. So to be positive, yes, it did look great on the IMAX screen.
And I didn't.
I don't regret going to see it.
And I didn't sit there and squirm in my chair and go, "Man, this movie has
Like
nothing to
I was
say."
never like, "Oh my gosh."
I enjoyed the watch. I just got done and said, I don't think that connected with me in any way because of that.
exactly
And it's what's
how
going
I
to keep me
was.
from going. All my friends are going, "You got to go see Napoleon," because it's more of a, Napoleon's fine.
It's fine.
Worth a watch.
The battle scenes look good, but there is again, to add to the negativity, there was a hint, even in the battle scenes of, this really isn't anything I haven't seen before.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I appreciated the battle scenes. They did look great, but even you go back like years and years ago, like recently I was just watching Saving Private Ryan. Those battle scenes blow the battle scenes in Napoleon away.
Yeah.
So
in large part because they stay so pulled back, because Napoleon's the only character you're invested in.
Yep.
They really don't follow any individuals in the battle. It's all like just the large scale of the battle.
Yes.
And here's what's happening. And again, part of why you feel like, am I supposed to be feeling invested in
Correct.
all that's happening? In Saving Private Ryan, because it's right there amidst the people, boy, you feel the heartbreak of like, this is horrible, war is terrible. I know that's the emotion they're going for.
Yes, and they succeed.
Yeah.
Now, I will say my mom, who is a history buff, she enjoyed Napoleon.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
And she doesn't look at things through the critical eye sometimes like you or I do. So, but I will say, I mean, she wasn't like, that was great.
Mm-hmm.
She was like, oh, that was a good movie. I liked it.
Yeah.
So even she had a positive response, but not an overwhelmingly positive response.
Yeah. One of my closest friends from Tennessee, shout out Daniel, he's a history teacher. He's got his master's degree in history, and he's also a movie fan like me. And so I'm just really curious to hear when
I would love to know,
what he thinks about
Absolutely.
it as a historian and a movie fan.
Mm-hmm.
So he was one of the ones that asked me, "Hey, what did you think of Napoleon?" And I was like, tried to explain it to him, and I was like, I just can't wait for him to see it.
Yeah.
I'm more curious about his.
For sure, I don't even know this person, and I'm curious to know their opinion as a movie buff and a history teacher.
Yeah. So, I couldn't even compare the two movies, but it's weird that one that like I went in with no expectations and come out like saying, "Hey, way better than I thought." One that I went in with, I don't know, I said great expectations for Napoleon, but just watched the thing, it should have been better. Yep. And yet I'd probably say they're about comparable movies as far as how much I enjoyed them.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, but you're right. I mean, two completely different movies, different feels, different audience, different demographic, you name it.
Yeah.
Completely different.
Anything else you want to say about Napoleon before?
No, I felt like I went on a long tangent of making it sound like I despised it. No, I'm good.
All right. Just talking about doing things a little different than we've done before on the podcast. It is our first time talking about new movies. It's also our first time talking about new movies that weren't movies we were necessarily like super hyped to see.
Like we knew we were going to do a Killers of the Flower Moon
Yeah.
episode. We didn't know we were going to do a Hunger Games.
Right. The new Mission Impossible, Oppenheimer.
Those are all movies we had played out.
Killers, like we were like, hey, these movies are coming out. We're all excited about it. So we knew we were going to talk for forever about them.
Yep.
And these were like, hey, we saw some movies. Let's talk about them.
Yep. So you got to tell us about because you saw two movies that I did not see.
Yeah, I'll give you a little brief bit on those because I don't want to just bogart the microphone here.
It's
but
fine.
Next Goal Wins was a new movie from Taika Waititi, and I have typically enjoyed Taika Waititi, so I was like, let's do that. It's based on a true story.
Yes.
About the American Samoa soccer team, something like that. And they're like the worst soccer team in the world, ranked last in FIFA.
They lost the game 30-something to 0.
Had the biggest loss in qualifier history, 31-0 to the Australians. And so this guy comes in to try to like coach him and help him be a little more respectable. Ultimately, just not a very enjoyable movie.
Really?
I was really disappointed with it. There were moments and flourishes of that usual fun that Taika's movies have. But on the whole, it was like kind of typical sports formula stuff. Taika Waititi's clearly not a guy who cares much about soccer because, the soccer was just so like terribly done. Clearly no interest in it, and so bad that you're like, okay, I know they're supposed to be the worst team in the World Cup history, never really qualified, but junior hires could go out and beat the guys the way that they're playing in this thing.
Yeah.
And then the biggest thing for me is that it was really like a pro-trans movie, because one of the characters in the real story was a trans athlete. Mm-hmm. But of course, I think if I understand it correctly, like it was more like after this timeline, they were already aware that they wanted to be trans, but they kind of like got through their soccer playing career and then transitioned. And in this movie, like they're basically like mostly transitioned and playing soccer. And so there's really pushing that along. And it's, I don't know. I hate to let it influence my enjoyment of a movie, but I'm a conservative person who I just don't want a movie about that.
You don't care about those stories.
And
same.
It's just, it actually kind of just made me uncomfortable. And I was like, I didn't know, like, and they kind of know that that's how people feel because they hide it completely from the advertising. Like, you're not going to see a preview with that character in it. And you're like, oh, that's the second lead in the movie.
Gotcha.
And
so I do wonder, and I always say this, like, I'm certainly not trying to get political in here because that's not who I am. But the movie he did before this was Thor: Love and Thunder, and there was a lot of stuff thrown into that, gender and all that stuff, and you're like, dude, this is not why I'm at Thor.
Yeah.
And it bogged down the movie, in my opinion.
And he kind of did the same thing with, they did a TV show called Our Flag Means Death.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a pirate show.
Yeah.
He plays the character Blackbeard in it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of the same way. Like the stuff they
just
throw
gets
into that one.
bogged
and
down
it
with
really,
that stuff.
like, it becomes like almost mainly about that. And you're like, oh, it was doing so well, and it just had to be about that. And so, again, I don't want to get all political, like you don't want to get all political, but I'm just gonna say it's not my cup of tea. And
Same.
so
It just always feels like it's shoehorned into the movie.
Yeah. And I know, again, it's based on a real story and this was a real person. So like, I can't be like, well, you just wanted to throw this in there and it wasn't there, but it just.
So a disappointment to you.
So it was a disappointment.
Okay. That happens.
Yeah.
I've had, you're looking for movies you like, or, oh, I like this director. And then you go see it and you're like, uh-oh, that was a miss.
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah. And then the other movie I saw was The Holdovers. Alexander Payne. Which
reunited with Paul Giamatti.
Yeah.
They were famous they did Sideways together.
I meant to look this up, but I'm almost positive that Alexander Payne usually writes the movies he directs.
That seems right. That sounds right to me.
And I was really shocked in the opening credits of this one that it was written by somebody else and directed by Alexander Payne. I was like, that's interesting. But I was watching it, I was like, this is a very Alexander Payne movie.
Yeah.
It just feels like to me, like he's a filmmaker who makes movies for adults.
Definitely.
Very much so. And it's a great setup for a movie. The idea for a movie could have been done by any number of writers and directors and work, because the idea is boys at this boarding school who don't have anywhere to go home for Christmas break, so they have to stay at the boarding school with the grumpy teacher that they don't like. And
it's just like a weekend of them together.
So it's the 2 weeks of Christmas break.
2 weeks, okay.
And so that's what The Holders Over is. The kids who are left over don't have anywhere to go. Everybody else has gone home for break. And then it even progresses from there. It starts off with several kids, and then through things happen in the story, it ends up coming down to just the one main kid and Paul Giamatti's character. And the kid in the movie is kind of a new actor. Is one of those introducing in the opening credits. The kid's name. Did a great job. Looks like he's cosplaying as Jean-Ralphio, though, from Parks and Rec. The whole movie, I was like, I can't get over how much this guy looks like he's dressed up as Jean-Ralphio.
Oh my gosh, I love Jean-Ralphio. Just a side note.
Yeah, he's the best. But, I mean, just one of those, like, really great character development movies as they spend time together and, like, grow to understand each other and the revelations about their characters and everything, like, as they go along. It's just like,
when done well, that's a successful formula.
Really well done story.
Yeah.
And, I got done and I was like, that, it may be informed a little by coming out of Napoleon, where I'm like, they did nothing to make me connect to that character. And like,
now I get to see
once the Holdovers, I'm like, boy, they hit a home run with making you connect and feel for these characters and enjoy the storytelling was just like mastercraft. And, so I don't know where it's going to land when the year ends and I make my list of favorites of the year, but I feel like it's going to be on my list of favorites of the year.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
His movies are, they're always intelligent. They're definitely for adults. Does seem like he likes to deal with that, like even Sideways, which is a very different movie, but it's like people in Sideways, like we're on a trip basically, and it's like in a compressed amount of time, and
Yeah, he loves movies about broken people.
Yes. His characters are always flawed. Yeah.
I will say he loves, I think he finds a lot of humor in like very uncomfortable and awkward things.
Yeah.
A lot of times, adult jokes and humor are situations.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't feel like there was too much of that in this one. That's usually like Alexander Payne. I'm like, I like his movies, but he's always got some scene or something that I'm like,
oh my gosh, this is hard to watch.
Could have done without that.
Yeah.
And I feel like it did mostly, and again, probably because he didn't write this one.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels like a filmmaker finding a story and going like, man, this is my kind of story. I like this. I want to be the one to direct this.
Mm-hmm.
And so it felt like an Alexander Payne movie, but it was a little different because written by somebody else.
Gotcha.
And then Paul Giamatti was great. Like I
don't think he's ever given a bad performance.
He plays a character with a lazy eye in it, and I'm sitting the whole time like going, did he just figure out how to do that with his eyes, or is it a contact, or is it CGI? Like, how did they do this?
You never know anymore.
Yeah, which is so funny to think about, like a movie like The Holdovers having CGI budget to mess with the eyes, which they might have, but it's just it's the most like nothing else could possibly be CGI in the movie.
You're right.
I say that, but nowadays you never know with like just basic backgrounds.
Sometimes I'm shocked to learn what is CGI in a movie.
I still remember being blown away, like seeing a clip of The Wolf of Wall Street, like them going down a boating dock, and like nothing was there, and Scorsese put it all in. I just assumed they went to like somewhere in Florida on a boating dock. And
I know it's so random anymore. I don't understand it always.
Yeah, so it makes me wonder, and I was wondering that about the Napoleon thing too, because shot in 61 days. It was like it feels like they were in a ton of different locations, but I guess nowadays
they weren't. Yeah. I don't think for 61 days that still blows my mind.
It's insane.
That's insane.
Yeah.
So here's a question for you about your triple movie day. Did you have it mapped like I want to see this first? I mean, was it just like?
I did. I actually did it. The ironic thing about The Holdovers being my favorite is I scheduled that last because it was the one I was the least excited to see. And I thought if I get through the other two, I'm not going to force a third one if I'm just kind of tired of sitting in a theater.
Gotcha.
At least.
This is the one I'm willing to not see.
So I actually started with Next Goal Wins, which I thought was the one I was
most excited
to see because I thought, this, no matter what, this would be like a fun time.
And it let you down.
Napoleon, I was like, I want to see this because I feel like it's going to be a big theater experience. And like it was good. And then, like I said, it actually ended up working out because it built and got better as it went, in my opinion. And they were actually all pretty nicely spaced out where like I had enough time to go out, go to the bathroom, stretch my legs for a few minutes before I went back in the theater, but I didn't have so much time to wait.
What'd you do for food?
Well, the first showing was 1:30, so I ate lunch at home. Then I went, watched the first movie, got popcorn and a drink for the second movie.
Gotcha.
And then ate,
Yeah.
I feel like I ate, sorry.
No, that's all right.
Sneeze.
I can see it coming. There it is.
There's going to be more. It always comes in bunches. Ate so much popcorn, probably only ate half the bag, but it felt like I ate, 30 pounds of popcorn. So I wasn't hungry until I got out. And then,
So, follow-up question. Now that you've seen all three, would you have changed the order in which you saw them?
No, I think I actually liked the way that it ended up playing out.
It worked out good for you.
Yeah, it did. Okay. And again, I like everything. Everything worked out just right. Like getting the popcorn drink for the second movie. Like I never once was uncomfortable. I wasn't hungry. I didn't have to go to the bathroom during any of the movies. Like the breaks were spaced out right. Like everything just felt.
There's definitely some strategy that goes into seeing 3 movies in one day.
Yeah. The only thing that I'll say that really got on my nerves throughout the day is, man, the previews are just so much now. It's 30 minutes of previews in each movie, and by the third time I was on the third movie, and it was a lot of the same previews, and I was just like, can I just not watch any of these previews?
Oh my gosh.
I'm so tired of the previews. And then when the 25 minutes of previews are over, they're like, welcome to AMC, and the little swirly lines with the popcorn and stuff.
It's like, shut up and start the movie.
Okay, yeah, when we get to that, and then it's like, oh, and here's Nicole Kidman walking to the theater and doing Crush Bill. It's like, Shut up, Nicole.
Nicole Kidman, who only does like prestige TV now. Okay, so that's a fair point.
Yeah.
After yesterday, I was like, I never need to see the preview for Aquaman 2 for the rest of my life. I saw it at Killers of the Flower Moon. I saw it at Hunger Games, and I saw it at Napoleon. And then when I was watching these trailers in the IMAX theater, maybe I'm just getting old and grumpy, but I was like, because it was all action movies. It was like Aquaman, the new one from Matthew Vaughn.
Oh yeah, the
Argyle, that new one with Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt. Fall Guy, which I like those. But it was like loud action movie preview, like 4 in a row. And by the time, the last one they showed was Aquaman. And by that time I was like, just start the movie. These loud, obnoxious action scenes are just, which I shouldn't complain because I chose to go to the IMAX, But
no, I mean, like, I think I've said it, people have been making this complaint for years, and it's just never going to change because it's how theaters promote their movies, I guess. But it's like when you buy a ticket for a movie that starts a certain time, and then a half an hour later,
it hasn't even started
You're
yet.
just getting ready to start. It's like, can we, I'm okay with previews. Let's start the previews 10 minutes before.
Early.
Even if it goes 10 minutes over, but let's be starting the movie, but within 10 minutes of when you start it.
And here's the thing too, like when I first got into movies, when I went to the theater and they showed a trailer, that was a treat.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, I finally get to see the trailer for, whatever movie, because I couldn't watch it at home because there was no internet.
Yeah.
Now, by the time the trailer for Aquaman 2 comes out, I've had the capability to watch that on my phone for a month. Yeah. I don't need to, and I'm not trying to just complain and be negative, but trailers in the theater don't have that special feeling like they used to.
Yeah. And we've complained about this before. Trailers just show too much.
Way too much.
There's too many movies that I saw a preview and I was like, well, I feel like I've seen the movie now.
Yeah. They show way too much. They basically, we could do a whole episode on trailers. Yeah. That'd be a good episode.
And I think the thing that annoys me about it is I still love a good trailer.
Me too.
I actually like to go back, like if we talk about it, I like to not see trailers best I can.
Same.
But it's fun to me to go back after I watch the movie
and watch the trailer
and be like, oh, that's interesting how they put that together.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I watched the Napoleon trailer after seeing the movie. That was the only trailer I was interested to watch because now that I've seen the movie,
how did they? Yeah.
And it's funny because they throw up the flashing words of hero, leader, lover, tyrant, whatever, all the different things he is, Napoleon. And I'm that's what the movie was. They couldn't decide on which he was. He's all these different things, but it's not really any of them. And,
correct. But I did have good theater experiences for both movies. Good. So when we went to see the Hunger Games, I didn't realize it, but we got the seats and the tickets, and it was the recliners.
Oh, nice.
And it was awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, it was nice to watch that movie with my feet propped up. I was leaned back. It was nice.
Yeah, theater quality, it definitely makes a difference. And
good experiences. Nobody was rude or obnoxious in the movies, so that was nice.
That's same for me. I will say the one nice thing about watching Next Goal Wins is I was the only person in the theater. It was me in a big room by myself.
Yeah, I don't think
sit in the middle, and I was the nice thing about that is if a movie's annoying you, or you're just not really into it, and you're by yourself, I did get my phone out a couple times. Normally, I would never do that in a theater. Just even if I'm bored in the movie, I'm not going to do that to my fellow movie watchers. But when you're by yourself, I was
why not
Google something? I just I started Googling it.
Mm-hmm.
I think I started looking up the trivia for the movie while I was in the movie, how accurate is this, and things like that.
And so definitely a disappointment for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's too bad.
We talked about it before we start recording. I'm looking forward to, I think we're kind of in movie season for me. I know summer's obviously movie season for a lot of people, but for me, it's the fact that it's cold.
It's dark.
Or it makes me want to watch movies.
Yep.
I get excited for Oscar season, all the prestige movies coming out. Mm-hmm. And there's something about getting to the end of a calendar year that also makes me be I just want to make sure I see all the 2023 movies I haven't seen. I want to get to the end of the year.
Because you're starting to think about your best of the year list.
Exactly. And I'm kind of obsessive about stuff like that. So
I've already kind of been workshopping mine in my head.
Yeah. So I've got a whole list of I want to make sure I see these movies before the year's out. So
do you have anything that like I've got to see this movie before the year ends. That's putting you on the spot, but
No, that's all right. There's nothing that I'm like so excited about. I do want to see Ferrari. I like Michael Mann movies for the most part.
I like Adam Driver.
I'm actually pretty interested in the Iron Claw. I don't think I really was until I saw the preview. And again, a preview that I think shows way too much, but was a good preview.
It was a good preview.
Great use of Rush's Tom Sawyer in the preview. Like, it actually kind of got me like amped. I'm like, this is a great preview. Great.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting story too of that wrestling family.
I think I would be more interested in Poor Things if I had a better history with that director's movies.
I don't have any history with it, but that movie looks weird. Like the weirdness of that movie grabbed my attention in the right way. Yeah. If that makes any sense.
No, I watched the preview and I said, I hate that I'm kind of in on seeing this movie based on the preview because I haven't liked the director's other movies. But that looked fun.
It does look fun. It looks weird enough. I like Emma Stone. I think she typically makes pretty smart choices.
I laughed out loud at the end of the preview, her saying, I need to go punch that baby.
Look, I laughed out loud when Mark Ruffalo is like intentionally overacting. Like, is it not Stello? I don't remember what, but he's like yelling her name and he's got her arms out. Yeah. Like, and it's like purposefully kind of bad acting. And I was like, okay, this movie just looks weird enough that.
Yeah. So I've got some other movies on here to see, but not really any that I'm like, that one I'm so excited about.
It does seem like in a lot of years, like around Christmas time, there's like a real obvious, like, this is the movie to go see. It doesn't feel like there's that movie this year. Yeah. I mean, maybe Ferrari might be the closest thing. I don't know.
And I guess maybe.
Of course, everything's been weird because of the strike.
It's probably unfair to have that expectation when it's like we got Nolan's Oppenheimer, Scorsese's Killer Flowers of the Moon, and Fincher's The Killers all before this time, and so we can't be like, oh, there's nothing at this time.
I know.
Because
it's been a good year.
And yeah, I mean, like kind of unusual timing for Killers of the Flower Moon and The Killer to come out because usually in past years those would come out in December.
Yeah, those would be Christmas, Christmas Day releases.
They came out a little before, and I'm happy for it. But because of that, I can't be like, oh man, nothing on.
Kind of feels like we peaked in the fall,
right?
And now, yeah, I agree, but yeah.
But again, I'm sure something will pop.
Sometimes something kind of sneaks up on you too that you didn't even really have a lot of awareness of.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm excited to see some of those and see some of the things I'm not aware of. I did watch several other movies, just on streaming or I watched the movie Dumb Money, which is about the GameStop thing. That was an enjoyable movie. I watched The Equalizer 3, which I just
about what you expected.
I always loved Denzel being cool Denzel.
Oh yeah,
I enjoyed it. I watched a few other movies, but nothing that really popped too much. So looking forward to. What I did do, and I don't know. Yeah, I did tell you this. I joined the AMC.
We talked about it this morning.
I get 3 free movie tickets per week, and I'm like, I don't know how long I'll keep that deal going, but I'm going to keep going in December because I'll have Christmas break and I'll have the opportunity to go see movies and it'll pay itself off. So now that I can go see movies for free, it's a little more motivating to go see movies that maybe otherwise I would have thought, do I really want to go pay to see this movie? Well, now that I'm not paying for it, I'm more
willing to give it a shot.
In large part with the Hunger Games is maybe I would have done it anyways so we could pod about it, but also just knowing pull it up, reserve my seat, and I could reserve online for free and go up there and just scan a thing and say, this is one of my free tickets, get in there.
Yeah.
I'll be motivated to go see more movies. Yeah. Which is always more fun.
It is. So, and I do think once in a while, like as a movie fan, it is important to go see something that you normally maybe wouldn't. Like that's kind of how I felt about Hunger Games. I mean, I went because Katie wanted to go, but I was thinking like, it's good for me. Like not everything is a Scorsese movie. Right. Not everything is The Killer. Not everything is Oppenheimer. So it's like, I need to give other stuff a shot too. And nothing else, it gives you perspective and you get a wide range and.
Yeah. And sometimes you're pleasantly surprised.
You are. And really, like, even as I was talking, I was like, man, I'm being way more positive about the Hunger Games than I thought I would be. So. Yeah. Sometimes
and way harder on Napoleon.
I was harsh on Napoleon. I kind of feel bad.
Last thing on Napoleon, this really shocked me. I looked it up and I was like, Because when I was watching, the one thing I was getting distracted by was, I was like, okay, Napoleon's notoriously short. I know that. Like, everyone kind of knows Napoleon's short. And I was like, there's scenes where, like, I'm like, did they just cast tall actors around
I wondered
him?
that, too.
Or is it trick photography?
I bet it's trick photography.
And I was like, I looked up, how tall is Joaquin Phoenix? He's only 5'8". And I was like, that shocks me because he's one of those actors, for some reason, I always think of as being a tall actor. I always think of him as being like 6'2". It blows my mind that Joaquin Phoenix, like, that I would meet him in real life and he'd be the
Shorter
guy.
than you, yeah.
It's very weird to think about. But I was like, I guess, Greg, maybe they didn't have to do a lot of trick photography. All you gotta do is cast 6 foot tall people around him.
Could be. I'm not sure either, but
he looks plenty short.
I think that maybe if Joaquin Phoenix was a regular listener of our podcast, he may quit after this episode because I especially was not kind to him.
Yeah.
I just did not like his performance. I didn't.
Well, Joaquin, if you are listening, just know that I loved you in Signs.
I was going to say that too. He was awesome in Signs.
Yeah.
I do want to say this. I'm going to choose my words carefully. I don't ever need to see Joaquin Phoenix in a love scene situation again for the rest of my life after this movie. That was weird and uncomfortable. And I was sitting watching it with my parents, and it was on the IMAX, and just nothing good came of that for me personally.
That's true. That's true. Now, just real quick before we go, give me your top 3 people you do need to see in a love scene again.
I'm not prepared to give that list, but I do know I don't need to see Joaquin Phoenix in one. That's what I do know.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I would totally agree with that. All right. I think that
was fun
for our conversation today.
Really, this is how we normally talk to each other. We just happened to record it today.
That's absolutely true. All right. So we thank you guys for joining us, listening in on our conversation.
Who knows what lies ahead?
That's so true. And we will see you guys
next time. Next time, yeah.